Hi everyone, my name is Antonia Ruppel, and as of September, I will be offering a new course for yogic studies called Latin for Sanskritists. So if you've ever taken an introduction to Sanskrit and you would also like to learn Latin, this course is for you. Basically, the thing is that Latin and Sanskrit and ancient Greek and a number of other languages are all related. They have many structural parallels. And if you know one, learning any of the others is a whole lot simpler. And that's exactly what this course is going to make use of. It is going to show you how you can use your knowledge of Sanskrit to learn Latin in one term, which is in a 12-week course. Now, what do I mean when I say knowing one makes learning the others easier? What do I mean when I say structural similarities? Take, for example, nouns. In Sanskrit, nouns have 8 cases, 7 cases plus the vocative. In Latin, nouns have 6 cases, 5 cases plus the vocative. And the cases that Latin has are basically the same as in Sanskrit. So, for example, the nominative is used for the subject and everything that refers to the subject, and the accusative is used for the direct object and also for the direction of a movement. But Latin is missing 2 cases. It doesn't have an instrumental, and it basically also doesn't have a locative case, both cases that we know from Sanskrit. What happened to those? Well, at some point they merged with the ablative, so that now one case form, which we call in Latin the ablative, continues the functions, expresses the functions of the original ablative, the original instrumental, and the original locative. You might now say, well, that's, quite a few functions for one innocent little case. And apparently the Romans thought so as well, which is why they used prepositions to keep the different functions of the ablative separate. Prepositions are words like in Sanskrit, saha, together with, or prati, towards. So, for example, if I want to express an ablative in Latin using the original ablative meaning of a source or a starting point, then I might do that with the preposition a. And so I have a pluribus unum, out of many, one. If I want to use an ablative with the instrumental, the original instrumental function of with, then the preposition I would use is cum. And so if someone graduates summa cum laude, they've graduated with greatest praise or with greatest honors. And basically what I've just told you is all that you need to know if you've already got basic knowledge of Sanskrit grammar, to then make sense of the Latin case system, because that's exactly what there is. Latin has 2 fewer cases than Sanskrit does, namely the locative and the instrumental, which have merged with the ablative, and the ablative therefore uses lots of prepositions so that we can tell which kind of ablative it is. The rest, the cases we have, the functions they're used in, are pretty much the same, with some minor exceptions, which of course I'm going to, introduce you to in our course. It really is that simple. And we are going to be doing this with nouns, we'll be doing it with verbs, we'll be doing it with participles, basically with everything there is. I will remind you of what you already know from Sanskrit in more detail than I'm doing in this video, of course. And then I will show you what is different in Latin, and we'll look at these differences in detail. Now, so far, I've mostly been talking about functions. What does a nominative do? What does an ablative do? But there's also forms. So how in Latin do I form the nominative case of a noun? How do I form the accusative case of a noun? And so on. And there's good news and bad news. First of all, the good news, the system in Latin is basically like the system in Sanskrit, namely we've got lots and lots of endings. Continued good news, Latin has fewer endings than Sanskrit does, so they're easier to familiarize yourself with. And I'm going to be giving you a nice sort of overview poster that you can just put up at above your desk and can use to have an overview, to get an overview of all the Latin noun forms there are, all the Latin verb forms, everything you need to know to form all the possible forms of a Latin verb, and so on. But the bad news is that because there are fewer forms, because there are fewer functional categories in Latin that we need to learn about, Latin then has more syntactic rules, that is, rules that tell you how you put words together to form a sentence with a specific meaning. And so while we save some time because there's fewer forms to memorize or to familiarize yourselves with, we will need more time looking at the syntactic rules of Latin. And by the end of the course, you'll have been introduced to all the Latin grammar that you need to know in order to be able to read original Latin texts. And of course, you will then either be able to do that on your own, or if you feel like it, you can join us again in January for a course reading Latin poetry. Specifically, we will be reading some of it. And if that still hasn't put you off Latin, then in May there will be a third term reading not poetry, but reading Latin prose, namely a few of Seneca's philosophical letters. And that's basically the structure of our course. So yogicstudies.com, Latin for Sanskritists, 12 weeks, 2 live classes every week, which are going to be recorded. So if you can't make one live, you can watch the recording. You can watch any recording whenever it suits you best. You can watch it as many times as you want to. And if you have any questions, my email address is antonia@yogicstudies.com, antonia@yogicstudies.com. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and maybe seeing a few of you in September. Take care, everybody.